The crisp, official envelope, stark white against the chaotic tableau of discarded circuit boards and half-eaten pizza boxes on Alex's workbench, landed with an almost audible thud. Ugh! On the wood, but on the precarious precipice of Alex's already frayed patience. It was the third in as many weeks, each one a progressively sharper jab from the Homeowners Association, accusing Alex of excessive noise emanating from the garage, a place that, to Alex, was a sanctuary of meticulously managed silence, a realm where the only truly discordant sounds were the grating pronouncements from Mrs. Albright, the HOA president, whose own voice could shatter glass at 50 paces. Alex, a figure perpetually smudged with grease and genius, whose deep-set eyes held the kind of fierce, unwavering focus seen only in sculptors perfecting their masterpiece or astronomers mapping distant galaxies, crumpled the letter with a frustrated sigh. The irony was a bitter tang on their tongue, for within those very garage walls, behind a heavy, insulated door that muffled even the hum of a passing car, a symphony of gears and circuits was meticulously being composed, not for cacophony, but for an unprecedented, almost ethereal quietude, the birth of something truly revolutionary, an engine designed to defy the very concept of sound itself. The complaints had started subtly, whispers from Mrs. Henderson next door about a late-night hum, or Mr. Peterson's mumbled grievances about unusual vibrations, always vague, always just enough to fuel the HOA's relentless pursuit. Alex had tried, initially, to reason, to explain that the only noise was the occasional whir of a cooling fan, the soft click of a relay, or the almost imperceptible hiss of compressed air in a testing rig. Sounds far quieter than the lawnmowers that blared every Saturday morning, or the neighborhood kids' boisterous play. But logic was a foreign language to the HOA, especially when Mrs. Albright wielded the rule book like a weapon, her perfectly coiffed silver hair and impeccably pressed blazers a stark contrast to Alex's perpetually oil-stained t-shirts and the wild, unkempt genius that radiated from their every pore. To them, Alex was the eccentric recluse, the shadowy figure who only emerged for supply runs, and the garage was a black box of unknown, therefore suspicious, activity. They couldn't fathom that Alex wasn't just tinkering with an old car engine. They couldn't possibly conceive that the low thrumming they sometimes thought they heard was merely the resonance of their own preconceived notions, or perhaps a temporary calibration of a system designed to eliminate vibration entirely, a fleeting moment of necessary resonance before true, absolute stillness could be achieved. Inside, the workbench was a sprawling universe of custom-machined components, intricate circuit boards glowing with an alien, vibrant light, and a massive, enigmatic prototype covered by a canvas sheet, its true form hidden, its very purpose a secret whispered only to the meticulously drawn schematics tacked to the wall. Alex lived and breathed this project, sacrificing sleep, social life, and conventional sanity, driven by a vision that transcended mere mechanics, a vision of powering the world with zero acoustic footprint, of ushering in an era where power generation didn't assault the senses, a future where silence was not merely the absence of sound, but the presence of an advanced, almost magical efficiency. Each accusation from the HOA, each menacing legal phrase in their letters, only fueled Alex's resolve, hardening their conviction that this secret, this monumental endeavor, must remain hidden until its grand, undeniable reveal. The latest letter wasn't just a warning, it was a formal notice of a mandatory inspection, a thinly veiled threat to shut down Alex's operations, a direct challenge to the very sanctuary where the world's first truly silent engine was on the cusp of completion, pushing the conflict to an unavoidable precipice and leaving Alex with mere days to decide, reveal the impossible, or risk losing everything. The formal notice wasn't just a threat, it was a hammer blow, a final, unyielding declaration that the HOA, spearheaded by Mrs. Albright's unwavering self-righteousness, was escalating their campaign. A $500 fine for repeated disturbance of peace landed on Alex's doorstep 2 days later, followed swiftly by a legal-sounding letter from the HOA's attorney, mentioning nuisance abatement procedures and the ominous specter of a lien on the property. The financial pressure was a new, unwelcome burden, eating into the already stretched budget for custom components and specialized materials that the silent engine demanded. Alex felt the walls closing in, not just the physical confines of the garage, but the invisible, suffocating boundaries of community expectation and bureaucratic tyranny. Sleep became a luxury, replaced by the relentless hum of complex calculations in Alex's mind and the soft, rhythmic whir of the prototypes. Internal diagnostics. The perceived noise from the garage was no longer just an annoyance to the neighbors. It was now a weapon wielded by the HOA, threatening to dismantle Alex's life's work, a project far more significant than any petty neighborhood squabble. Alex's once infrequent outings for supplies became clandestine missions, quick dashes to obscure industrial hardware stores or specialized electronic shops miles away, often under the cloak of night. Neighbors, once merely curious, now cast suspicious glances, their polite waves replaced by averted eyes or whispered conversations that ceased abruptly upon Alex's approach. Even the local coffee shop, a former haven of brief normalcy, felt tainted by the pervasive judgment. Alex was becoming a pariah, an island of furious invention in a sea of suburban conformity, yet this isolation, while painful, paradoxically sharpened their resolve. It reinforced the belief that this groundbreaking work, this pursuit of absolute silence, was a lonely path, but one utterly necessary. The world, stuck in its noisy, inefficient ways, simply wasn't ready to understand the quiet revolution brewing. Behind that garage door, the silent engine wasn't just an engine. It was a paradigm shift, a redefinition of power. Its core concept revolved around the manipulation of subatomic vibrations, converting ambient energy into kinetic force without the traditional combustion, friction, or exhaust that generated sound. Imagine, Alex often thought, a city powered by whispers, vehicles gliding by like ghosts, industry working without the roar of machinery. The current prototype, affectionately nicknamed the Hush, was a complex tessellation of specially designed nanocomposite alloys, magnetic levitation chambers, and an intricate network of resonant frequency dampeners. It wasn't about muffling sound, it was about preventing its creation at a molecular level. The challenges were monumental. Developing the alloys required precision engineering beyond current industrial capabilities, forcing Alex to meticulously sculpt and refine components. In the garage, sometimes spending days on a single, minuscule part, the magnetic levitation system, while theoretically elegant, was prone to infinitesimal instabilities that could cause catastrophic system failures, resulting in sudden, jarring thumps or clangs, the very noise that the HOA was so diligently documenting. Each failure was a financial drain, a frustrating setback, and another potential entry on Mrs. Albright's ever-growing list of grievances. The energy feedback loops were another nightmare. Achieving sustained energy generation required a perfectly balanced kinetic exchange, and any slight deviation could lead to system overloads, manifested as a sudden, intense heat or a high-pitched, almost ultrasonic whine that, while inaudible to human ears, sent dogs howling across the neighborhood. Another subtle, yet undeniable disturbance that Alex couldn't entirely explain away. Alex spent countless nights hunched over glowing schematics, fueled by strong coffee and sheer willpower, debugging lines of complex code, recalibrating sensors, and manually adjusting microscopic components. They were moments of profound despair, instances where the sheer complexity of the task threatened to overwhelm, where the vision of a silent future seemed utterly unattainable, buried under mountains of failed experiments and HOA fines. Yet, each time, the memory of a hushed hum, a fraction of a second of pure, unadulterated silence from the hush, would ignite a fresh surge of determination. This wasn't just about Alex's reputation or property. It was about changing the world, about proving that a cleaner, quieter, more efficient future was not just a dream, but a tangible reality waiting to be unleashed. The mounting pressure from the HOA, the fines, the isolation, it all became background static, a mere irritant against the grand symphony of invention playing out within the hallowed, secretive walls of the garage. The question wasn't if Alex would succeed, but how much more could be endured before the silent engine's true roar, or rather, its profound stillness, finally silenced all accusations. The air in the garage crackled with an almost palpable tension, a stark contrast to the intended silence of the hush. Alex, eyes glued to the diagnostic monitors, had pushed the prototype to its absolute limit, attempting to stabilize the elusive quantum resonance field that was the key to its truly silent operation. A faint, almost imperceptible hum had begun to build, a sound so low it vibrated more in the chest than in the ears, a sign that the energy containment was nearing its critical threshold. Just as the final data points flickered green, a sudden, piercing screech tore through the air, a metallic shriek that seemed to rip the very fabric of reality, followed by a violent explosion of sparks and smoke. The prototype, once a gleaming testament to Alex's genius, buckled, its nanocomposite casing warping inward, the magnetic levitation chambers collapsing with a sickening crunch. A wave of superheated air slammed into Alex, throwing them backward against the workbench, the acrid smell of ozone and burnt circuitry filling the space. This wasn't a malfunction, it was a catastrophic failure, a complete meltdown of the core energy matrix, far more devastating than any previous setback. The garage door, despite its heavy insulation, rattled violently, and a moment later, a furious pounding erupted, followed by Mrs. Albright's shrill voice, amplified by what sounded suspiciously like a megaphone. "That's it, Alex. This is beyond excessive. You'll be hearing from our attorney. And this time, we're seeking immediate injunctive relief and eviction." Her words, though muffled, were a death knell, echoing the despair that now consumed Alex, lying amidst the smoldering wreckage. Alex felt a profound, crushing defeat unlike any before. Months, years of relentless work, every spare penny, every waking thought poured into this singular vision, now lay in ruins. The dream of a silent future, a vindication against the petty tyranny of the HOA, evaporated like the smoke still curling from the prototype's remains. The fines, the isolation, the constant harassment, it all seemed trivial compared to the utter annihilation of the hush. A wave of nausea washed over Alex, a mix of physical pain from the impact and the soul-crushing weight of failure. Tears, hot and bitter, mingled with the grease and sweat on Alex's face as the crushing realization set in. It was over. The project was dead, and with it, perhaps, a part of Alex's very soul. The garage, once a sanctuary, now felt like a tomb, filled with the ghosts of shattered ambition. Every accusation from the HOA, every skeptical glance from a neighbor, every dismissive comment about Alex's hobby, now seemed justified. What if they were right? What if this grand vision was nothing more than a delusional obsession? The thought was a poison, seeping into every corner of Alex's mind, eroding the fierce determination that had sustained them through countless sleepless nights. Alex lay there for what felt like an eternity, the rhythmic pounding on the door fading into the background, replaced by the deafening silence of despair. But even in the deepest abyss of defeat, the mind of a true innovator cannot entirely surrender. As the initial shock began to recede, replaced by a dull ache, Alex's eyes, still clouded with tears, idly drifted over the charred remains of the prototype. A small, almost insignificant detail caught their attention, a single, tiny component, a specialized resonant frequency dampener, which, despite the immense heat and force of the explosion, remained largely intact, albeit slightly discolored. It was an anomaly. Every other part of the core energy matrix had disintegrated, yet this one element, designed to absorb and neutralize specific vibrational frequencies, had survived. This was the component Alex had spent weeks perfecting, believing it was the key to the final, absolute silence. Slowly, painstakingly, Alex dragged themselves closer, ignoring the searing pain in their side, and picked up the dampener. It was warm, almost humming with a residual energy. As Alex examined it, a memory surfaced, a fleeting thought from months ago, during an early, flawed simulation, a theoretical possibility of a negative resonance feedback loop if the dampener's material composition interacted with the energy field at a precise, yet previously unachievable, frequency. At the time, it had been dismissed as an impossible scenario, a mathematical anomaly. But now, looking at the intact dampener amidst the destruction, a chilling thought, a terrifying, yet exhilarating insight, began to form. What if the failure wasn't a failure of the dampener itself, but a catastrophic success of that negative resonance, a runaway reaction caused by its overefficiency at an unexpected frequency? What if the noise wasn't from the engine breaking down, but from the very act of it trying to achieve a level of silence so profound it was tearing itself apart? The glimmer was faint, almost imperceptible, like a distant star breaking through a storm cloud. But it was there. It wasn't a solution, not yet, but a new direction, a terrifying hypothesis that turned the entire concept of the failure on its head. If the dampener was too effective, if it was creating an anti-frequency that was destabilizing the very fabric of the energy field, then the problem wasn't building a better dampener, but understanding how to control its immense power. The despair didn't vanish entirely, but it was now overshadowed by a rekindled spark of intellectual curiosity, a desperate need to test this new, dangerous theory. The HOA's threats, the eviction notice, the ruined prototype, they were still formidable obstacles, but Alex now had a singular, all-consuming focus, to harness this runaway silence, to tame the very force that had just destroyed months of work, and to finally, definitively, prove them all wrong. The tension was at its absolute peak. Alex was cornered, facing ruin, but armed with a desperate, audacious new plan born from the ashes of catastrophe. The stakes had never been higher, and the path forward, though fraught with peril, was now terrifyingly clear. From the ashes of despair, fueled by that terrifying yet exhilarating insight, Alex rose, not just physically, but with a renewed, almost manic intensity. The ruined prototype, once a symbol of crushing failure, became a macabre roadmap, its charred components whispering secrets of the negative resonance feedback loop that had caused its demise. The key, Alex realized, wasn't to prevent the anti-frequency, but to harness it, to create a controlled environment where its immense power could be channeled without tearing itself apart. This meant a complete overhaul of the energy containment system, a radical redesign of the magnetic levitation chambers, and an entirely new approach to the nanocomposite alloys, requiring an even more precise molecular structure. Days bled into nights, the garage illuminated by the relentless glow of welding torches and the flickering screens of advanced simulation software. Alex ate, slept briefly, on a cot beside the workbench, and breathed the project, every fiber of their being dedicated to this final, desperate push. New, specialized materials were ordered, some custom synthesized in a makeshift mini-foundry Alex rigged up, pushing the boundaries of what was thought possible in a residential garage. The process was agonizingly meticulous, each connection, each circuit, each atom of the new alloys placed with the precision of a surgeon. The old noise complaints from the HOA faded into a distant hum, replaced by the internal symphony of Alex's own focused determination. There were no more jarring thumps, no more ultrasonic whines. Only the soft, almost reverent sounds of creation, the gentle whir of a 3D printer extruding a new component, the faint click of a micro-wrench tightening a bolt, the quiet hum of the ventilation system working overtime to dissipate the heat of intense concentration. The moment of perfection arrived on a Tuesday, just 3 days Before the HOA's mandated final inspection and the looming threat of eviction, Alex had spent 70 continuous hours without sleep, eyes bloodshot but alight with an almost feverish anticipation. The redesigned H.0, sleek and compact, pulsed with a barely visible energy. Alex had connected it to a series of highly sensitive acoustic meters, calibrated to detect even the most minuscule vibrations. With a trembling hand, Alex pressed the activation sequence. A soft, almost imperceptible thrum resonated for a split second, a final, fleeting whisper of its former self, and then nothing. Absolute, profound silence. The acoustic meters registered a flat line, 0.0 decibels. Not a hum, not a vibration, not even the faint whisper of air displacement. Alex held a feather above the prototype. It remained perfectly still. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched Alex's lips, then spread into a wide, triumphant grin. It was done. The impossible had been achieved. The world's first truly silent engine, a marvel of engineering that defied the very laws of conventional physics, hummed with invisible power, a testament to relentless perseverance and audacious genius. The silence in the garage was no longer a void, it was a presence, a powerful, undeniable declaration of victory. Now, the plan. Alex wasn't just going to let the HOA inspect the garage. Oh no. This wasn't about proving innocence. It was about a grand, undeniable revelation, a moment that would not only clear Alex's name, but redefine the very concept of power. The HOA had scheduled a final compliance review at 10 a.m. on Saturday, demanding full access to the garage. Alex had sent a curt reply, agreeing to the time, adding only, "I assure you, the neighborhood will be profoundly silent after my demonstration." This cryptic message, no doubt, only further inflamed Mrs. Albright's suspicions. The plan was audacious, simple, and utterly devastating in its elegance. Alex would not just show them the engine. Alex would power something with it, something that would make their accusations of excessive noise crumble into dust. The old, gas-guzzling, notoriously loud lawnmower that Mr. Peterson used every weekend, the one that always sparked the first round of complaints, sat in Alex's garage, abandoned at a recent breakdown. It was the perfect prop. Alex spent the next 2 days meticulously integrating the H.0 into the lawnmower, replacing its internal combustion engine with the sleek, silent marvel. The external appearance of the lawnmower would remain unchanged, a familiar, noisy symbol of suburban life. The transformation was purely internal, a secret waiting to be unveiled. The anticipation was a tangible thing, a buzzing energy that vibrated through Alex's very bones. The thought of Mrs. Albright's face, the smug satisfaction of the HOA board, the skeptical glances of the neighbors, all of it would be replaced by utter disbelief, then dawning realization, and finally, stunned awe. Alex envisioned the scene, the HOA delegation, armed with their clipboards and stern expressions, expecting to find a chaotic, noisy workshop, perhaps even evidence of illegal activity. Instead, they would witness a miracle. The stakes were astronomically high. If the demonstration failed, if even a whisper of sound escaped, Alex would lose everything: the house, the project, the years of sacrifice. But failure was no longer an option. The silent engine was perfect, it was ready. And Alex was ready to silence the accusations, not with words, but with the profound, undeniable power of absolute stillness. The stage was set, the curtain about to rise, and the quietest revolution the world had ever seen was about to make its thunderous, silent debut. The Saturday morning sun, usually a cheerful harbinger of weekend activities, felt heavy, casting long, accusing shadows as Mrs. Albright, flanked by a grim-faced Mr. Henderson and the HOA's stern-looking legal representative, marched purposefully towards Alex's garage. Their expressions were a mixture of smug satisfaction and righteous indignation. their clipboards clutched like shields, ready to deliver the final blow. "Alex," Mrs. Albright began, her voice cutting through the quiet suburban air like a rusty saw. "We are here for the mandated inspection. I trust you understand the gravity of this situation. Your repeated violations have left us no choice but to proceed with eviction proceedings." Her eyes, sharp and unforgiving, darted around the garage, clearly expecting to find a chaotic, noisy mess, perhaps even some illicit, sound-producing machinery. Alex, however, stood calmly beside the seemingly ordinary, slightly rusty lawnmower, its familiar, loud engine housing giving no hint of the revolution within. A small crowd of curious neighbors had gathered, drawn by the unusual spectacle of the HOA's full delegation descending upon the quiet inventor, their faces a mix of curiosity, concern, and a touch of schadenfreude. Alex offered a small, polite smile, a stark contrast to the HOA's aggressive posture. "Of course, Mrs. Albright," Alex replied, voice steady. "I understand completely. And I believe you'll find that all violations have been comprehensively addressed." The lawyer scoffed, Mr. Henderson shifted uncomfortably, and Mrs. Albright's lips thinned into a disapproving line. "Addressed, Alex. We heard that explosion just days ago. What exactly have you been doing in here?" she demanded, her gaze fixed on the slightly singed ceiling. Without another word, Alex walked over to the lawnmower, its worn handles a stark contrast to the advanced technology now pulsating silently within its shell. The neighbors leaned in, expecting the familiar roar, the choking exhaust, the vibration that rattled windows. Mrs. Albright adjusted her glasses, ready to document the decibel levels. Alex placed a hand on the mower, a quiet reverence in the gesture, and then, with a deliberate motion, pulled the starter cord. The collective breath of the onlookers seemed to catch. There was no cough, no sputter, no ear-splitting roar. Instead, an almost imperceptible shimmer passed through the machine, a visual distortion in the air around it, and then, nothing. Absolute, profound silence. The blades, now spinning at an incredible, almost invisible speed, cut through the air with no more sound than a gentle breeze rustling leaves. Alex pushed the lawnmower forward, guiding it silently across a patch of overgrown grass near the garage door. The blades sliced through the green, leaving a perfectly manicured stripe, but the only sound was the soft snip-snip of grass being cut, the whisper of air, and the distant chirping of birds. The reactions were immediate and priceless. Mrs. Albright's jaw dropped, her clipboard slipping from her grasp and clattering unnoticed to the concrete. Her perfectly coiffed hair seemed to deflate slightly, her eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and dawning horror. Mr. Henderson, who had been preparing to pull out his phone to record the noise, stood frozen, his mouth agape. The lawyer, initially smirking, now looked utterly bewildered, his legal arguments dissolving into thin air. The neighbors, initially murmuring, fell into a stunned silence, their collective gaze fixed on the impossible sight before them. Then a gasp broke the quiet, followed by another, and then a wave of excited whispers. It's completely silent." Someone exclaimed, "How is that possible?" Another whispered in awe. Mrs. Henderson, who had been one of the earliest complainers, stepped forward, her face a mask of utter astonishment. But we heard things, all the noise," she stammered, pointing vaguely at the garage. Alex stopped the lawnmower, the blades instantly ceasing their silent rotation. "What you heard," Alex explained, their voice calm and clear, "was the sound of a revolutionary engine being born. The initial noise was the sound of controlled failure, of pushing the boundaries of physics, of a system learning to eliminate sound at a molecular level. What you see now is the result." Alex's triumph was not loud or boastful. It was the quiet, undeniable power of proof. There was no need for grand speeches or accusations. The silent lawnmower, a symbol of mundane suburban life transformed into a harbinger of a new era, spoke volumes. Mrs. Albright, finally finding her voice, stammered, But this is unprecedented. Why didn't you tell us? Alex simply shrugged, a hint of weariness in their eyes. Some things, they said, gesturing to the silent engine, need to be experienced to be believed, and sometimes, innovation thrives best in silence, away from premature judgment. The HOA's legal representative, recovering his composure, stepped forward, a new, calculating glint in his eye. Mr. Alex, he began, this changes everything. The HOA would like to formally retract all complaints and fines, and perhaps discuss investment opportunities. The shift was palpable, the transition from antagonist to eager supplicant almost comical. The silent engine, the hush, was more than just a personal victory for Alex. It was a beacon for a quieter, cleaner future. Imagine cities where the roar of traffic is replaced by the gentle whoosh of air, where factories operate without the deafening clang of machinery, where power plants generate energy with no more sound than a whisper. Transportation would be revolutionized, industries transformed, and urban environments reborn, free from the pervasive acoustic pollution that had long plagued human existence. The technology had implications for space travel, for medical devices, for every facet of life where noise was a byproduct of power. Alex, once the neighborhood pariah, was now hailed as a visionary. Their garage transformed from a source of suspicion into a cradle of global change. The HOA, humbled and apologetic, became an unlikely ally, eager to support Alex's future endeavors. The neighbors, once quick to judge, now looked upon Alex with respect and awe, eager to learn more about the quiet miracle born in their midst. The story ended not just with vindication, but with the profound, silent roar of a revolution, promising a world where progress no longer came at the cost of peace, and where the most powerful force was found in the absence of sound.